All right. So let's dive into it.
hmm
So reporting, demystified. What should companies start with first?
Yeah. So there's a few angles I think that we could probably kind of look at this and go through this, but we're firm believers when you're thinking about the type of analytics that are really going to help you kind of make decisions, understand your business. The first type or flavor of analytics that we will start with is it's got a lot of names. So I'll say them all. It'd be life cycle reporting, or you might be calling it funnel
Funnel
reporting.
reporting.
You might be calling it buying stage reporting,
Mhm.
potentially pipeline reporting, depending on where you think pipeline starts, because we'll talk about this.
You know
Essentially,
what? I had, just not to cut you off, but like I had this realization the other day where like you can somewhat use funnel and life cycle in the same term, because a funnel is just like funneling down, and that could be like how you go through that one funnel. But a life cycle is how many times you can go
right.
through it. So anyway, just wanted to point that out, because I'm like, technically you can say there's a life cycle in a funnel.
And you get to a pipeline stage in the funnel. So all the words make sense. But anyway, it's true. It's true. And I wish someone would come up with just like the perfect word, but everyone uses all of these words interchangeably. So that's why we like to say them. So but the point is that when we think about it, really it's what are you sending to sales? So the signals, the engagements, the buyers, like the accounts, like you're sending stuff to sales for them to action, or they're prospecting into like signals or accounts. When that process starts, so that their sales are prospecting and the signal that they're reacting to, all the way through to closed one, it could be for multiple go-to-market motions. It could be for product-led. It could be for more of the traditional like marketing demand gen model. You might use the term MQL. We prefer sales ready. We've talked about a lot of that on the podcast. It could be an account-based motion. It could be customer expansion motion. It could be a partner motion. It could be sales outbound motions. So like all of these different ways that you can start a sales process, react to a signal, and move them through the buying stages. And most companies these days, like back in the day, it was really complicated with the serious waterfall.
Mhm.
Now most companies are just like sales ready. This is when like sales is going outbound. It is when you've got a lead coming in, sales is reacting to it, or a partner deal, etc. Moving to a working stage, moving to a meeting stage, moving to a pipeline stage, moving to closed one, and tracking that all the way through. That, when you think about, and then the analytics you get from that is multifaceted, right? You're getting metrics around how your SDR team's performing.
Mhm.
Like who out of your SDR team? What regions for SDR team? Like what are all the conversion rates? Who's booking the most meetings? Who's
Mhm.
converting at the highest rate? Then you can see what signals are we sending to them.
Mhm.
Could it be more of an account-based signal? Could it be that someone went to an event? Could it be paid ad, a demo request? We're seeing all of these signals and how they're converting through the funnel to meetings, pipeline, and revenue. So I'll let you kind of jump in here because there's a lot more to talk about, but that's the place we want to start first, right?
I think some like kind of real life examples of why this is like the place to start too. So when we think about an early stage company, and the volume is a thing. And when I talk about volume, I not only mean about volume of inbound leads of like where they're coming from, but also the volume of marketing activities
And budget.
and budget. So it's very like simplified, and almost like not useful to have any other, like if you're trying to say do multi-touch attribution, because what it's going to tell you is like contact sales is your top performing, you know what I mean? So like I think focusing on a model where it's telling you, okay, out of these like leads that are coming to you, or the few programs that you're working on, like you said, how are they going through the funnel? How's your sales team, working them? Are you also like, is your ICP, like, are you attracting your ICP? Because even then you might be having a period of time in your company where you're trying to figure that out. And you're also trying to figure out like, what qualification criteria do we really need? I mean, even CS2, like 10 years in, we're still like, oh, actually, now like, let's figure out like maybe iterating and see, what is the right buyer for us. And I think smaller companies focus on that. So, but you don't have a ton of like pipeline acceleration programs or anything like that happening. You might, but you still might see that in the data. So I think that's a thing. And then also the thing I like most about funnel reporting is it really is a planning and forecasting mechanism. And when companies have revenue goals, which no matter what size you have, you're going to have a revenue goal. The best way to work back from that is if you have those accurate conversion rates, and even down to like a channel, because I think even at that point, you're thinking about your marketing from a channel, not just like a channel and campaign, and even more so like campaign in that region. You're really thinking of it from that higher level because things are a bit more simplistic.
Yeah. It's very actionable data too. So I love the planning component for sure. Definitely agree with everything. But then even when you get down into just like the nitty gritty of the data, there's so many clear actions, right? Like being able to see which SDRs are converting to meetings the highest. So that you can see, okay, well, who's our high performing SDRs versus the lower performing? Maybe our lower performers need some more training, onboarding, etc. You can easily see, okay, we sent, these demo leads to sales. We sent these content syndication, and then we did this trade show and we got this list and we sent them to sales. And the demo is converting into meetings and pipeline like 50%, content syndication is like 10%, and the event's like 25%. You go, okay, well, now you know what to do with that data. Okay, obviously, you can't just magic more demo requests out of thin air, and you still want to do those events, you still want to do all of those channels, but maybe you don't send them to sales. Maybe you've realized that you're sending them to sales too early. Yeah. And sales are an expensive resource. SDR is expensive. You're qualifying them. You're giving them a lot of busy work. And maybe you then hold back those people, those buyer or potential buyers, because they're not actually buyers, you realize through your data. And then you've made a much more efficient sales engine because you're sending them much more high quality buyers to work. So it's the most actionable, multifaceted kind of data model to be able to just like set up. The other thing about it, it's got both kind of a mixture of lagging.
Oh, I was just going to say that.
You say it then. You do it. And leading indicators.
Yeah.
Right?
So I literally was just about to say that. How I do like the thing about it is like it does have leading and like you said, lagging indicators. Where if you're just looking at say attribution or influence reporting, like you have to wait a long time to see pipeline revenue. But the great thing about the funnel is you can start to get those early metrics. Like
if one point of caveat, if you're measuring your funnel pre-opportunity creation, which is something we see a lot. A lot of companies have like opportunity creation onwards locked in, but they've got no visibility into the stages before that, like sales ready, working, meeting buttons.
Or they look at them disjointed. So they have like MQL
or like
up until
new
conversion.
lead to MQL.
Or new,
that kind of thing,
And then the opportunity conversion is only on the opportunity. So they can't figure out actually like which MQLs have actually turned into. And so they look at it within the same time frame, and that's really bad. Do not do those conversion rates. That's not cohorted. So anyway, but 100% great. And then some of those leading indicators are really good for, like I said, those companies that like want to move a little bit faster, because at least you can even see like, are they getting recycled earlier, or are they getting disqualified and things like that.
And what are the reasons why they're getting recycled and disqualified? And
exactly.
Yeah, it's just such a rich data set to have, just to be able to like see what's happening in your business.
Right? I like personally, like I think maybe because I like love like sales productivity and SDR and all that kind of stuff. I love taking that data and also marrying it with like activity data, so you can see like, is there a correlation between activity that's being done by the SDR versus their performance? And sometimes it's not, but it's just like a really good set of data that you can work from.
And a lot of the a lot of people criticize this type of data model because they think it's like a single touch attribution model, which it mostly is, but it has a lot more in it than just attribution. You could just strip out the attribution component completely, and still see conversion rates through stages of planning. You can still see conversion rates by region, by buyer profile, by rep, by geo, there's so many ways that you can still get a lot of value out of the data. And then it's just like the attribution component is just bonus, right? And it is obviously useful to still see that, and very useful. But like you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater because you go, oh, the attribution bit is a bit more simplistic. But then the one other thing about the attribution is go look at your marketing budget, and it's probably very likely that 80% or more of your go-to-market budget is around driving sales-ready buyers to sales and SDRs to convert them into pipeline. And then there's like 10-15% is for like maybe like pipeline acceleration stuff, and then there's some for brand and PR and all this stuff. But like so much of your budget, 80% might be quite high, but like I'm sure some people have the stats on this, is going into this. Chris Walker calls it like that factory production line, kind of like generating signals, generating buyers, getting them to sales, converting them all the way through.
Yeah.
And I think measure that. Like you want to measure that, and you want to be able to see where those investments are going. So
we're talking about maturity, and for early companies, I will say like that like is the primary goal.
Well, I mean, even
just like
we've worked with some several $100 million ARR businesses that still haven't got this set up well.
Right.
So if you're there, and you're a mature company and you still don't have like proper visibility into that, unfortunately you're a very mature org, but your go-to-market analytics is very immature. So but that doesn't mean you should be jumping over to like some crazy complicated analytics model. You need to also start the basics.
Yeah.
It's not like matching the maturity of this to the maturity of the org in general. It's just matching it to the maturity of like what reporting do you have? So anyway, should we go into number 2?
Yeah. Okay. So the second one, when we think about multi-touch attribution.
Yeah.
So I think that I think one of the things is like why this also is like a secondary metric to look into is it's maybe easier to set up but harder to analyze the data. And I only say it's easier to set up because tools it's a bit simplified where it can look at your Salesforce campaign. And it's also reliant on like UTMs. But I will say that like,
it's not easy.
It's not easy. And the foundation needs to be there. So when we talk about looking at your campaigns, like what's your campaign structure like? Also, is your team using UTM? So if you do have a tool that's listening for tracking those touch points, like those need to be clean and they need to be accurate. And so I will say that there is a level of foundation that needs to be done in order for that to work well.
It's just a little bit easier because one of the hard things about the lifecycle funnel reporting is making sure your sales process and all those steps are really clear so you can see when the buyer has hit those milestones to be able to calculate the conversion rates. Multi-touch attribution is a terrible data model for looking at conversion rates through your funnel.
Yes.
So it just can't do it. I mean, people try, but like I promise you, we said this multiple times on the podcast, it just is not the data model to look at conversion rates through your funnel. So
I also don't think
you don't. So you don't need though. You don't need that. Like it's a bit easier because you're just trying to track all the touch points and tie them to ops. So like, you don't have to worry about all those steps, but it's still not easy.
Right. And there's things to consider. Like, are you looking at just your contact roles and opportunity? Do you even use contact roles? Are you looking at all the contacts of the account? Where then you got to know that like some of this is going to mean that the data gets diluted and so forth. And so just knowing that fact, right? Touch points can get diluted. There's a factor in timing. It's a lagging indicator. Certain channels are going to be more effective at, different types of touch. Like if you're using a model that's looking at different.
Well, yeah. So this is why we start with section 2 is basic multi-touch attribution.
Yeah.
So where you don't worry about should we use first touch or last touch or W shape or even spread or custom or AI or throw in another buzzword. You're not looking at that. You're not trying to divide an opportunity into little chunks and then give it to all the touch points. Instead, the first step, so this is the second stage. First kind of step when we think about multi-touch is you just want to create a relationship between all of your touch point data. So most companies would have this like in their Salesforce campaign membership.
Yeah.
You might have a tool like Visible or something. You might have a custom object, whatever. all of your touch points that are trackable, and you want to create a relationship between those and opportunities. And that would be through, contact roles and opportunities, ideally, because otherwise, if you do it just on the account, then it just overinflates everything.
Yeah.
So then when you have that link, then you want to, the analysis you want to do at this stage is just looking at, okay, what are our win rates on an opportunity if this touch point is there? This is why it's good for kind of that deal acceleration stage, because you can look and go, okay, if we have an opportunity and someone who's part of that opportunity goes to this, CMO breakfast or whatever, does that opportunity close at a higher rate?
Yeah.
Or does it not? So you start doing this lift analysis, both from win rate, or you do it for opportunity, velocity, close days. And you can start to see some patterns there. You can also start to see some patterns just in total op value. So you could look, and when you look at total op value, essentially it's like, okay, looking at my channels and campaigns, how many ops and the total value of those ops have they touched? It's not, I don't love it, but what it's best at, it's better at telling you what's not working than what is working.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of times a lot of things are just going to look like they're working. Because all you need is an email, whatever, engagement, or you shouldn't be tracking that, but an email click.
Yeah.
But or just kind of, just one, they downloaded this ebook, one person at that opportunity, and maybe most companies are going to download that, your big ebook or whatever. And it's just going to really inflate things. But what it might show you is, okay, we actually spent a lot on ads in this particular ad platform, and no opportunities have been touched. So that's touched, or no opportunities have been influenced. And that's kind of a more binary insight, right? Because you go, wow, okay, we spent $1 million on this, hasn't even touched an opportunity. So that's where that basic multi-touch is. One thing I will say back on actually the first step is, on top of a life cycle, we do recommend doing self-reported attribution.
Yeah.
Just asking people, doing research, getting the salespeople to ask where they found you. So we won't go into detail of that, but I just wanted to, we missed that on the first step. So life cycle, self-reported at the beginning, basic multi-touch second. Anything to add on the multi-touch?
No, I think even when we're talking about simple multi-touch, you can just build an influence model within Salesforce or CRM. That's as simple as what we're talking about. It's just directional data that can help you. And I totally agree of it's more about what you're not seeing in the data that makes sense. But also you need to keep in mind time. You need to figure out when am I looking at this type of data and comparing against my campaigns. It's not going to show you your most recent campaigns. It's not, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen an email from a CMO or leader being why is our campaign from last week not showing in this data? Can you please tell me how much pipeline we've created out of this? It's
time is it's a very complicated thing to get your head around. Time. I'm not even joking.
It is. Yeah.
The factor of time in attribution is actually quite a hard, complicated thing to unpack.
It's the number one thing I think people
we'll get onto that with ROI. Yeah. So step 3 is actually an optional step. This is more advanced multi-touch attribution. This is where you get your $1 million op and you slice it up into lots of little bits, and you go, this little bit goes to the event, this little bit goes to, the paid ad, this little bit goes to whatever. Or a big bit, whatever. But you split it up and you hand out all of these little chunks of opportunities to everyone. The reason why it's optional is because it can just be wildly complicated, and your company has to be ready for it. And because what often happens is you do that, and then everyone starts to nitpick. They look at an opportunity and they go, okay, this opportunity, they went to this really amazing event, but that event only got 2% of the opportunity. And the fact that they went to our website and downloaded this, content and went to the webinar the next day, got 30%. That's not right. And I've wasted so much of my life in those conversations. It makes me want to die. But so maybe that's an exaggeration. not die.
It
makes
makes
me want to
you
bang
feel
my
dead
head.
inside.
It makes me feel dead inside. Okay, but it's just it can get so complicated and so in the weeds and so argumentative. Like if you think you can get argumentative over single source attribution, you can do the same with this.
I think a big thing
multi-touch.
here too is like what you're counting as touch points. Like we've talked about, like you said, like does an email click count as a touch point? Does a sales activity count as a touch point? And I think we need to think about this, right? There's a pie and you're serving out pieces of that pie. And once you invite more people to the party, guess how much pie people are going to get? Less, right? And that's exactly how attribution works. And like, so once you start introducing things that shouldn't be happening, no matter what, email transactions, clicks you can't even rely on. It doesn't even matter if it was like, sometimes you can like click into something and be like, I hate this. Where can I go find to unsubscribe? And you're counting that as something that
yeah, I've seen people count unsubscribes and then multi-touch attribution on that actually.
Yeah. And then also like sales activities like, oh, I'm going to send you an email before you set your meeting or right before you close. Like, no shit. Okay. Like those things should be happening.
Don't have
no matter
sales.
what.
We talked about that in the last podcast, right?
Yeah. And so it's like, but I do think that it's like the one thing I'll say about multi-touch attribution, I like to say it's a marketer's metric. It's a marketer's metric. It's not a go-to-market sales activity metric. Unless, yes, you're running sales outbound campaigns and there's effort. But look, marketing's involved.
Exactly. Most sales outbound campaigns are being supported by marketing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like SDRs are running them, but marketing's coming up with the messaging, coming up getting the list, all of that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
So like I think the thing with multi-touch, it's not that you don't do it. It is optional. You don't need it. It can add value, like true advanced multi-touch, but be prepared for a complicated journey of discovery around how to get people aligned on the model that you're choosing, how to get people to understand it, how to use the data.
Yeah.
Because depending on the model is how you're then going to answer different questions, and each model can kind of answer different questions different ways. It can get complicated.
Yeah.
Step 4. So we promised we were going to do a longer episode on this, and we're kind of running out of time, I think, on this topic. So we might have to do a dedicated one just on this. But step 4 is around ROI. And I think the reason why you don't want to start with ROI is because if you think about how complicated all of the steps before are, each of the steps have their own kind of very complicated things set up, a lot of foundational things, a lot of getting the right data architecture in place for the model, how to interpret the data, how to train people on it, enable people. That is all needed for ROI. So you have to get that done first. And then with ROI, there's an extra component, which is cost data. So now you have to go, okay, I've got my attribution models. Maybe I'm using my life cycle and tipping point for my sales ready. I've got, multi-touch for my pipeline acceleration, and I'm doing, whatever, self-report attribution. I've got all that set up. But now I have to then make sure that all of my cost data is structured in a certain way. And this is where time is very complicated. Because for a lot of your evergreen channels like paid, you need to know like how you need to choose a time period. So maybe it's monthly, and you go, okay, I need to know, how much I spent on paid ads in this month. And I need to know how much, then where do those conversions go? Because then you need to link all of your cost data to all of your attribution data in the different models that you have. So you can go, okay, well, this dollar turned into this revenue, right? Yeah. And or the attribution around that revenue. So like that then is like 2 databases that you need to combine somehow. And they're often not kind of documented and tracked in the right way to just have like this kind of easy, okay, well, this just turned into this. There's a lot of work on the cost data side that you need to do, so you can even match it to any of the data that you have on the attribution and go-to-market data side. Yeah,
I think that it also, in some ways, people like the tracking to this can be a little very, very hard. And I think when we're talking about ROI here, you're even talking about doing it at the campaign level. like you said, even like channel level, but I will like it then forces people into this box of like, okay, well now we need to structure our campaigns a certain way. We need to have like campaigns for knowing exactly when people come through as paid search for, this conversion on an event. So we can give that, cost credit and so forth. And so it's tricky. I think it's probably not best to be done within CRM unless you figure out the right way to do it. And we're always still figuring out the right way to do that without having to have this complicated campaign like structure. And then for me, I think depending, okay, say you're like from a maturity standpoint, I think you need people, you need the systems for tracking costs, you need enough like probably cost to like warrant this. And so I would say like the maturity of the company makes sense. Like if you're willing to just throw bodies and time and working in Excel or a BI tool or anything like that, go ahead and do it. If you want to do ROI as an early stage company, I still think like a simplified model. And this is where even like your funnel metrics can make sense because you most of the time, like you said, a good amount of your budget is going into those campaigns and channels that are going to drive those sales ready leads. And so say you want to, it's very simplified, but if say you want to look at just channel in, channel out at like the end of a year, it's not going to be perfect, but you can at least see, okay, how, out of all these channels that have these sales ready leads, how much of those ended up in a certain amount of pipeline and then close one revenue. And then compare that to how much budget did I spend in those channels? And it's maybe not going to be a perfect metric because it's not going to be exact. But if you're that could be enough for your finance team to say, hey, this is directional data to show that like it's good that we invested in paid ads, or it's good we invested in these events. And at least you're on the right path.
Yep. It's the fourth step for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're bringing in the finance team, you're bringing in more teams, you're bringing in more data, and it can it's hard. And I think I did a post the other day, which was talked about, some companies, I don't want to say never because they're still operating. So maybe they get there one day, but they've been around for multiple years. They're mature companies, hundreds of millions of dollars in ARR. And they still haven't got to the stage where they can do all of this really well.
Yeah.
So I want to call that out because I think sometimes you look on LinkedIn or you kind of hear people talking and it feels like everyone's got their shit together and has like figured everything out. No. I can tell you, we've worked with hundreds of B2B tech companies. No one's figured it out, right? Like we help them figure out certain steps and move them from one step to the other over months and years and kind of keep moving through and maturing and everything can get better. But there's no just like silver bullet, easy way. It takes a lot of work on your foundation and kind of working on your data and working with your teams, enabling people. There's a lot of work in this. Mm-hmm. So don't feel discouraged if you haven't got there yet. Get it on your roadmap, work towards it, but you have to go through those steps before to get there.
I think also you want to make sense of the data to also not have it steer you on the wrong path. So this will be my last thing. And this is why ROI to me sometimes is very hard because when you're strictly going off ROI data and sometimes even your funnel data, although being able to see organic and direct, which a majority of the time is not actually organic or direct, but like you're maybe gonna like not invest in channels that are,
really important.
Really important, like podcasting or doing influencer marketing or something like that, And so I think that having a team who's just solely focused on this like dollar in and dollar out, you're likely not going to be also doing the right marketing, in my opinion.
It's true.
Yeah.